Hello and welcome again to Patio Perspectives. This is our monthly or sometimes monthly podcast, webcast, where we focus on event sustainability and talk to other thought leaders within the industry. I'm really excited today to have uh, somebody that I just found out about, really, but I think is going to become quickly known to everybody and become a thought leader within our industry. Hassan Murad, who is the founder and chief trash talker of Intuitive AI. I'll let him tell you more about the company, but Intuitive AI is really working on our waste problem, and they are working on empowering a zero waste world and how that might apply to events. They've been doing a lot with event related um, waste and recycling, trying to solve that problem. So I'm going to jump right in and say, hello, Hassan. Welcome to Patio Perspectives. And can you just give us a little bit of a rundown on your background and where
Yeah,
AI started and what you guys are working on?
yeah, for sure. Thanks, Paul, for having us, and we're very excited to be here and talk trash. And so, by background of my co-founder and I, Vivek, we both come from India and Pakistan. We saw where the waste was ending up. And as we immigrated towards Canada and studied robotics and got a chance to kind of be a fly on the wall in a lot of what we call 0 to 1 moments, where an entire industry was either being created or being disrupted. So in the autonomous submarine space, autonomous drones to detect wildfires and for good, as well as being a fly on the wall in the early autopilot team at Tesla in the self-driving car space, under the crazy guy himself. We really, as we were wrapping things up, we said, what's a problem worth solving that we want to dedicate the next couple of years of our life to? And it was something that was really close to our heart, that if we could make a tiny difference, which is the waste problem, right? And so I think everybody knows that majority of the things that we generate are unfortunately not recycled or composted or reused. Um, and so there was a simple thing. We were married to the problem, not the solution. And we said, what could we do that could start making a difference in this? And so obviously from an events perspective, um, you know that a lot of events generate a crap ton of waste. And especially us, Intuitive being part of, I don't know, 50 plus events in this year, it was just insane to kind of see every single event having a similar problem.
Right.
Um, so yeah, we dove in, and it
Yeah.
helps multiple industries, specifically events as well.
Yeah, and I think, we certainly have been focused on the waste problem for a long time. When I was at Oracle, we had some guiding principles and, zero waste or, waste less was one of our guiding principles. And the reality is that waste is tied to carbon as well, because a lot of that waste
Right.
actually does create carbon. Um, and
Yeah.
I think what I want to talk about a little bit is the product that you guys have created called Oscar, which
Hmm.
I think is not only helping to solve the waste problem and the carbon problem to some degree, but from
Yeah.
what I've seen, there's a lot of sort of fun elements to it as well. So
Hmm.
let's kind of dive into that a little bit. Let's go ahead and
Yeah.
set up the problem a little bit, and then like how you came to the solution of Oscar. And if you want to,
Yeah. Yeah.
show some visuals, now might be the time.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'll start off with something you just mentioned, which is the how it touches the carbon problem. Um, First, I think I want to touch on, like, everybody that's listening probably has watched Wall-E, right?
Hmm.
Either with your kid or by yourself.
Hmm.
And
One of
I
my
think
favorite movies.
exactly, right? Like it really touches you at every single level. And I think when you see the world heading in that direction with AI and robotics actually supplementing a lot of the labor side of things, then unfortunately what happens is we are headed towards trashing the planet. right, with materials. And if we have our eyes on a different metric, which is just and only carbon, we might miss how certain elements, for example, waste management, different sources say, might not be the most significant carbon contributor if we reduce it.
Right.
And a lot of people use that reasoning to be saying, well, there are bigger things to be focused in on. And I think that's how we end up with a world like Wally,
Yeah.
right? Because we we only prioritize certain pieces, but we forgot the basics, which is if our oceans and our rivers and our the land that we live at is polluted by materials, um, it's not a place that anybody would want to live in. And unfortunately, that is the situation where we came from. And so we kind of have this insight into what could happen, and Wally kind of hit it home. And it's like, let's actually stop that. Can we reverse that
Right.
and not lose sight of stuff? So the AI, just want to mention that piece, but jumping into sort of setting up the problem. So happy to share the screen real quickly.
Yeah.
And so this thing in sorry, can you see it,
Yeah.
Paul? Perfect. So this is what Vivek and I saw, and it was a stat that was shared by World Bank through a study they did, and the numbers might have changed now, and it's nowhere close to something that anybody would be proud to put it over there.
Right.
But this was the number that only 2% of the world's waste was actually something was done with it. And so that, like, we couldn't sleep that night. We said, all right, this is a problem that is worth solving. And the next thing was definitely, other than the whole Wally world, which is even a bigger reason to do it, it does have a massive carbon impact, right? Project Drawdown estimates that 10 gigatons would be eliminated if we actually just doubled the world's recycling rate.
This
Right?
is this is this is such a perfect illustration of kind of where we are with the linear economy of the take, make, waste mentality that the world has, been stuck in ever since the Industrial Revolution, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the whole reason that I think, how do we accelerate the circular economy?
Right.
And recycling is a huge part of that. Designing materials to be recycled, reused, or eliminated is, I think, the first step. But a lot of people need data to support that,
Right.
right? And that's really where we're trying to help with AI, because the entire space is operating with like nothing. There's no data. The waste management companies aren't the most friendliest and smartest in the space to be providing that. So anyways, to wrap up this slide, if we just double the world's recycling rate, massive impact.
Right.
10 gigatons, to kind of give you an estimate, it's equivalent to about 3 billion cars worth
Right.
of emissions.
Right.
We don't even have 3 billion cars at the moment, but if we could eliminate 3 billion cars worth of emissions, it's
Right.
insane.
Yeah.
So again, naturally the question comes, okay, well, where do we focus in on?
Right.
And one of the areas where it's very counterintuitive or not very easy or there was a lot of frustration, was when people walk up to a bin, there's
Right.
about 9,000 recycling rules.
Right.
And so a lot of people ask us when they see our solution, they're like, well, do I really need something to tell me to recycle? Well, we're so bad at recycling because only 27% of people get it right.
Well, and
And
I think part of the
good.
problem too is that it's not that people don't want to recycle, it's that even with the pictures there, it's confusing,
Yeah,
right? And so I think a lot of people just sort of give up and say, okay, I'm just going to throw it in this bin and let somebody else deal with it.
somebody else deal with it. I mean, you're lucky if you get the signage.
That's right.
And then, like, let's even put that to the side. Even if you did memorize it, there's 9,000 different ones.
Mhm.
Right? Or 8,999. So it's very, very challenging. And so that's where the thought process was, let the bin do the thinking.
Right.
Um, and so we went into a track where we applied our robotics background, and we said, you know what, people need to be, not eliminated, but taken out of this loop,
Right.
right? Let's actually sort for them and let them just put their item in, and let's do that. Unfortunately, it made people dumber. And so people started getting, and that was interesting, that people started stuffing every single thing in, which basically meant higher contamination, and things had to be rejected more. So, we also did a survey at a university we initially deployed. There was one smart bin on one corner, and the
Mhm.
other side was also getting worse. And so
Mhm.
we surveyed people to understand, why are you getting worse than you were at? And people were like, no, 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 you don't know. There's been like this thing just sorts everything out for us.
Mhm.
And I was like, I know what that bin is. I created it. It's on the other side. That's like, how are you connecting these two things?
Right.
So it was interesting to see people's behavior toward, like, if it's consumption and it's the everyday products, you have to have an element of education, or
Right.
behavior change is kind of where we landed. Um, Somebody from the team shouted, "Hey, why don't we just use the AI and tell people what to do?" And that's kind of where we came to answer your question of what is the Oscar at the moment. That's where we landed, to use the AI, which is on the top, to see what people have in their hand, and then visualize it very, very intuitively, right? Not give you the thousands of like rules, but just tell you what you've got and how it can sort
Right.
at
So
the event or at the property. Good.
so this is not really a generative AI like ChatGPT. This is more of a pattern recognition AI. Is that how you would categorize it?
Yeah, so I'd call it, the actual two elements or departments is computer vision being applied to machine learning, and
Yeah.
that's the branches of AI that Oscar falls into, which
Right.
is really teaching AI or systems to see and learn how to see items and
Right.
materials, and detect that.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Mhm. Um, so again,
So
just
the
to
so,
just go
yeah.
ahead.
So the idea here is somebody walks up to the screen, and the screen looks at their item and immediately tells them, "Okay, you put it in this particular bin." Is that kind of the basic of how it works?
Exactly, exactly. So it makes it very, very simple. People walk up, and as they're even walking up, the Oscar is seeing what they have in their hand, right? And it's making the screen into a very simple decision. So it nudges that individual to make the better decision. And so I'll show you actual real data of, like, are people sorting, was
Yeah.
the question,
Right.
as we set this up, and you start seeing this, where, again, it's insane to see people taking their time
Right.
to sort, and you see the other individual helping.
Right.
Like, where do you see that? And that was encouraging to us, right? If we just simply visually make it simple for people, that can actually start changing behavior. Well, not everybody will get it, and that's why we'll kind of show how we keep applying behavioral science and AI, and different nudges, and you start getting a bigger percentage of people to engage.
So I think one question people might have, because you mentioned,
Mhm,
9,000 different recycling rules. So depending on
mhm,
the destination or the venue, or where people are doing their event, are you
mhm.
able to tweak Oscar to the rules of that particular venue or that particular destination, and the rules that might apply for recycling in any different locale?
Yeah, again, great question, and that's usually a question that is the first one that we get at anytime we're speaking anywhere.
Right.
And so the answer is yes, and 100%, because it was designed, and Oscar retrofits to bins, right? So we don't provide recycling bins because people have bought their infrastructure. We retrofit so that it just adopts to whatever the site is trying to do
Okay.
or moving towards. And so it had to be built so that it could adopt to, Japan's rules, Australia, different parts of Europe that were in China, US, obviously, down in South America, Canada, other areas. So yes, it can change region to region, but also building to building. And I'll kind of go a step further to say that within a university, we see near the engineering departments and the labs, you might have a bit more of a granularity where one of the bins is batteries, right?
Uh-huh.
Because that's what's being more commonly disposed over there, or electronics or wires, versus another department that might be more, let's just call it housing or dorms for students.
Right. Okay. Okay, that's
Mhm.
great because I think that would be, a definite advantage if you can go into a venue and say, "Hey, we're bringing in this system, and it's already designed to retrofit to your recycling rules, and so
Exactly.
here's how we're going to collaborate or work together to
Yeah.
increase our waste aversion through, um, some audience engagement as well as, just trying to do sorting in a way that you have less work to do on the back end."
Exactly. Exactly. So every site has their rules. Their waste hauler tells them and complains quite a bit. And so this is sort of the perfect opportunity for them to just be like, all right, I'll dump it all in here
Right.
and it's set up for my site to solve my problems.
Okay, so you sort of alluded to it, but what kinds of overall results are you seeing in terms of additional waste diversion from events that have used Oscar?
Yeah, again, great question. I'll go back and make it a little bit more visual again. Um, but one of the data points that you see at the very top left over there is diversion actually shoots up. So in this situation, in early stages, we started seeing it go from like 18 to 20%
Uh-huh.
was the initial baseline, going all the way up to 91%, right? And like that is zero waste status for an event or for a
Right,
site, right? And that's that anything above 90% is considered zero waste status. And that's what was insane to see is people would prefer to walk up to the Oscar bin and their accuracy at sorting is going to be a lot higher than a traditional bin that confuses people.
right,
Um, to add to like how we get to that and how we maintain it, because like we're there a lot of these sites like airports, universities, malls,
right,
there are some people that might repeat, like the employees,
right,
but majority of them are transient,
right,
right? And so how do you continuously make it exciting is a challenge,
right.
right? And that's where this kind of goes into the whole other experiment that we did, which was, hey, why don't we reward people for doing the right thing, whether it's a pat on the back or it's an
Mhm.
actual reward, a
Yeah.
trip to Hawaii. Um,
Right.
um, I know I would do anything to get the trip to Hawaii. But then there's this piece which is grouchy, Oscar getting grouchy.
Right.
Um, and that's really, really, again, I'll leave the next slide to it, which is, did that work? Was the question. And you see this person here actually taking an item out after they've been grouched at
Right.
and then sorting it in the correct bin.
Right.
Like, who does that, right? and and that really made us think that, okay, AI, behavioral science, nudge the individual, and if we have the power visually and from an audio perspective to to guide an individual, that could really change things.
Right. So this really becomes then more about, or more than just about recycling and increasing waste aversion. This becomes also a real sort of experiential thing where you're engaging the attendees in a whole different kind of way. And
Right.
to your point, gamifying it, or, just experience, creating an experience around recycling, which
Right.
to me says that it's such a great
Mhm.
opportunity for, one, education, but then two, um, involving other sponsors and or partners to incentivize people. And, so can
Yeah.
you give us an idea about, how people are
Yeah.
using to do those kinds of things?
Yeah, I'll go back to again another finding, which I think you're hinting towards is, people walking up to a bin, they're following different instructions, but then people are all like, we thought it was just for people that are about to throw their waste,
Right.
but then people are showing items that they're not even throwing, and recording that experience, giving us a thumbs up, and it's like, what's going on
Uh-huh.
at the bin, right?
Right.
Like everybody in the industry is talking about how to make that experience as seamless, as quick as possible. Like, let's just have them, let's just take it out of their mind.
Right.
And we're here. People are spending time, you know, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. They're showing everything. Um, I always like to ask this question, and I'll quiz you on this, Paul, on the spot. Um, what do you think is the most shown item to an Oscar?
The most shown item. Ooh, I would say probably some kind of a container, like a coffee cup
Right,
container or something like that.
right. And again, I think that's definitely in the top three. Um, the most shown item is actually a bit counterintuitive. It's a mobile phone.
Oh.
And
Okay.
and like who would have thought that the most shown item to an Oscar, this AI trash talking bin that is going to help increase recycling rates and composting, etc., is going to be a non-waste object, right? And that's what like this slide is really going into is data is showing us that people are interacting. This is like what we call the bintersection,
Right.
right? In their day. They're going about doing different things. And, we've just caught them at the intersection and we start a conversation,
Right.
right? And Oscar's doing that. So that's what the next stage leads into is, we started branding the experiences on the Oscars for those events. Because if you look at a traditional event, there's like, sponsors are trying to get really, really, I'd say, boring traditional packages, right? Napkins, Wi-Fi sponsorship, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And so here, what you have is the ability to communicate to a consumer in a very disruptive way,
Right.
right? And out of the box. And that's what marketing and advertising is all about, is how do you get in front of them where, people are spending their time, but it's white space right now.
Right.
We designed something similar to this and we were like, all right, let's just see if it, lands. And so again, you see that with the data, the thumbs going up, because the whole game that was designed was if you do a thumbs up or a thumbs down, you can respond,
Hmm.
right? And that we could ask specific questions, right?
Right.
Did you enjoy this at the event? Do you know Paul is speaking in the next 20 minutes?
Right.
And things like that that lead toward, more attendees, higher views, increased visits at a booth. Again, in a fun way, right? Like we're asking questions at stadiums and different arenas about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and whoever's performing in the background.
Right.
Um, but there's always a question that we sneak in terms of, hey, did you know that aluminum cup in your hand goes into this bin? And then people are like, thumbs up, and that
Right.
increases recycling capture.
Right. Yeah, I mean, personally, if I was going to do, something with Oscar, I would want to inject a number of sustainability related questions as, kind of education
Right.
opportunities. And I would probably want to work with sponsors that had those same values and would want to, you know, I mean,
Mhm.
I could see it being an opportunity. And I think I think you and I have talked about this as well. It's an opportunity even to promote like local companies that are doing sustainability work or that have sustainability products, or an
Right,
opportunity. Maybe it's a small vendor uh, that is using sustainable food, for example,
right.
and is tied into the event in some way. So I think there's numerous opportunities here in terms of not only solving the waste problem, but having a
Yeah.
engagement around it.
Yeah, and to drop another experiment to see whether we could drive local attention, impression, and visits to local businesses. We gave away, again, we experimented on merchandise as well as a gift card, right? So a simple gift card of, let's say, at $10, we gave 20% off, which is $2 off, right? When we would give that was interesting because we would give that when people have answered and earned their
Right,
reward,
right,
right? They've answered three questions and then three out of three, and then boom, the QR code pops up on the screen to say, hey, you've won.
right.
And usually the scan through and conversion
Yeah,
is very, very low,
right,
right? If you just place a QR code anywhere. And
right,
so this AI powered experience to drive local visits or purchases, we got a 78% scan through rate,
okay,
unheard of, and then a 91% purchase through rate, right? And so that starts making you understand or connect the dots of like, okay, this in a QSR setting or other areas is generating significant dollars for a site
right,
in just promotional LTOs that is being provided.
right. So let's come back though to kind of the data piece of this. I think a lot of times people are wary of some of the data and numbers, like, do I trust this number? Do I trust that it's 91% better sorting accuracy? How are we able to verify those numbers, and how are we able then to communicate to event planners and to attendees that you know
Yeah.
that they're helping us do the right thing, and that that the numbers are accurate?
Yeah. So I completely agree. The whole industry at the moment, especially on the waste and recycling side, or even the advertisement sponsorship side, there's nothing, it's not measurable,
Right,
right? The numbers are all based on, different inputs. That is not something that you can audit, right? And that's what this changes. And so for facilities that we provide this, like malls, airports, universities, corporate campuses, like it is changing the game because Paul, like the only way to get data on waste is by digging through trash,
right,
right? and and that is what we did in the beginning days to audit and to confirm what Oscar is giving is accurate.
yeah,
And what you start finding out is universities and a property can only afford to do an audit once a year or
mm,
or one audit in 3 years. So to put things in perspective, the once a year is 0.2% data that you're getting.
right,
So you're taking the 0.2% data and then you're making a prediction on what to do with your facility, right? That is terrible accuracy.
yeah,
And so what Oscar changes obviously is per event, right? And hundreds of days potentially that a site, if they opt in, they're getting, which is, you can see a lot better in terms of what actually is happening at the site. What are people confused about at the bin? And so, even event professionals, they're getting hammered with like requests. How do you report on sustainability,
right,
waste generation, disposal? And so they don't have to physically audit anything because this is auditing using the AI on whatever people are disposing, whether they engage with Oscar or not.
right. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
So how do you really start the conversation then with event planners, or how should event planners think about engaging with you and with Oscar? Is it purely from a recycling perspective, or how do you start to advise them to take advantage of kind of the breadth of what Oscar is capable of doing, not just from a trash and recycling perspective, but attendee engagement, lead management, all of those kinds of things? What are the conversations that you're having with the event planners that you've worked with in terms of, taking advantage of, this AI based system?
Yeah, we're again, there's a myriad of opportunities at the moment that we're exploring and working with event organizers and professionals. So companies that have concerts that are going on, hundreds of them, festivals that they're organizing, to industry conferences. Um, um, it again, it really ranges in where Oscar is becoming not only a technology that can help a university or a mall or an airport or a corporate campus. Now it's coming into the event space where a lot of people essentially want to get a set number of Oscars, right? And they know that they've got 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 events that are happening,
Mhm.
and they're going to be utilizing Oscar. It's going to be part of their sponsorship package. So we help them with all the tools that they need for that so they can upsell that. And then all of the rules is something that we work on with them to set up, right? So as it's important to really make sure that it flows through the conference center as well, right? They're measuring and waste is being collected at the source, but can the conference center actually take that, receive that?
Right.
Right? And if not, and if somebody is really wanting to make sure that this goes and flows all the way through, then we bring in and guide to other partners that we have, so, which we call material partners, right?
Okay.
They're very interested in getting these clean materials
Right.
from specific events because that feeds into their business.
Yeah, because you take composting for example. Like not every municipality, not every venue, composts in the same way, or even has a market for compostable material. And so, I
Exactly.
think there's, again, an opportunity if you can bring in partners, like a micro hauler or somebody like that, to take care of the compost. Then you can start to really think about, upping your waste diversion numbers.
Exactly. So I mean, we look at it always, if it's a property or an event that's happening where Oscar is being placed,
Right.
there are brands and sponsors that want to be on the screen, right? They fund a lot of the placements.
Right.
And then on the other side, there's the materials that come out,
Yeah.
right? Our goal and dream here is to make sure that we get the materials out and to the right places that are going to turn them into something, right? And none of these people have insight into, like, they need consistent streams and they need clean streams of material that have solid data on what it is.
Right.
Right now, there's no infrastructure to provide any of these three things.
Right. And so when you're advising clients and talking to them, are you able to kind of help them and advise them on how to get sponsors, how to think about, what the experience is going to be in terms of content, or what's the role, that intuitive AI is taking in those conversations?
Yeah, it really depends on the organizer, whether they want Intuitive's media arm to be helping them with the sponsorship side. And again, we've got tons of partners that place these units in different areas, or it is really up to them to lead and take the lead on it. It really depends on how they like to run it.
Right.
And we support as they want us to.
Yeah. We didn't really talk about this in advance, but I'm wondering just off the top of your head if you have like a an example or a case study of somebody that you've worked with that you feel like has really taken advantage of, all the capabilities of Oscar and what they did to make it successful?
Yeah, I mean, it's countless customers that we can think of in the airport space, mall space, university space, and I'll quickly share my screen as well. Um, that kind of hint towards the footprint, right? So across 5 continents, 20 countries, some of these names are familiar,
Mhm.
across verticals, right? So airports, stadiums, malls, hospitals, universities, you see conferences there as well. But it is extremely diverse,
Mhm.
not only in the US but everywhere else as well. That we're helping in different areas, right? So some that are more on operations for their property, some that is more focused towards generating revenue that then funds the material pickup.
Right.
Um, Again, it varies uh, region to region, customer to customer. But the ideal partners for us are always people that get the whole piece of it, right? This is sponsor led placement of the units that both the event and Intuitive essentially gets funded to place these units. And then making sure that the materials are going in the right places is the second part to it. And we do that through our material partner network.
Yeah. So let me bring it back to a little bit of a case study because I know one of our board members uh, who works for Workday at their Workday Rising, they did engage with you guys, and I'm wondering if you could just talk
Mhm.
about that experience a little bit in terms of working with a specific conference and kind of what they did and whether they saw any increases in their waste diversion or attendee engagement or just kind of what some of the success factors might have been.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I remember when this was being set up, Oscar was being set up at Workday Rising. Again, loved working through with the team at Workday as well as GPJ. Oscars being spread out in different areas. So first, the question is where across the event do we want to place them? And
Right.
it's always at the troublemakers, right?
Right.
Where are the busy bins where we are going to see a lot of people eventually pass by and there's going to be a lot of contamination or disposals. So
Right.
first it's that specking out, and the team was amazing in providing the hot spots where we wanted to put the Oscars in. And then the second part was we calibrated and set it up for this site, and so all of the branding of Workday Rising, different messages or different sessions throughout the day was something that was programmed across the Oscars. So it was a very custom activation
Right.
across the Oscars. And then we had also somebody from the Oscar team, so we called them Oscar ambassadors,
Yeah.
um, that was on the site to make sure that everything is operating and if anybody has questions, so helping them out. And again, data on traditional bins is anywhere from 18 to 27%. I believe ours was well north of that, higher than about 70%.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, again, fun and a simple rollout that happened fairly quickly, and at an event where thousands of people were attending,
Right.
and how getting them to engage in these busy troublemaker spots
Right.
was the goal, and it was knocked out of the park.
And from a sort of functional or logistical standpoint, when you're setting up multiple Oscars at an event and you've got content on different screens, is there sort of a central way that you're organizing that content and controlling it, or is it individual at each screen has its own kind of control, or just trying to think through from an event planner perspective,
Yeah,
the logistics around not just the bins but the content piece of it.
yeah, no, great question. Usually, every technology or system has CMS. right? And we have what we call the OMS, so Oscar Management System. And so for partners that have significant number of events, that's something that we provide them with, right? So it's an easy process to be like, all right, upload this content across this part of the journey, right? Because Oscar has elements across it where nobody is, if people are just passing by, content could be displayed,
Mhm.
right? And that's a different engagement point versus when you walk up to an Oscar, right? That's the what we call the discovery side, right? And if you want Oscar to be saying a specific thing or be branded in a specific way, then that's something that you can change and edit and adjust. So just as these two specific elements, there are more elements on the Oscar, right? We call it the whole Oscar journey. When
Right.
you show an item, when you do a thumbs up, when you get rewarded or grouched at, like every element is something that we can customize for the event. So you can imagine like Taylor Swift popping up and going like, "What are you doing?" when you
Right.
when you put it in the wrong bin, or Billie Eilish, or so it can get very, very granular and customized for that event.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something that's controlled and opened up to our partners, which we call the OMS.
Yeah. And is there some flexibility within the management system in terms of like, hey, we want to add this piece of content that, into what we're doing because we're seeing, some interest over here, or we're seeing, we want to drive people to this session or whatever it may be.
Exactly. And so to give you an example, a lot of these Oscars that are going throughout the conferences at the moment, either promote a specific session that's happening and or is playing that specific message. So every single item within it is customizable for event professionals to be like, all right, I want during this time of the day to be promoting Paul's session. And then during this time of the day, I want to be promoting Hassan's session, right? Um, and or you can even get more specific to say, hey, when a person disposes this item, I want to get, I want to promote them or push them towards this
Mm.
session, or this detail should pop up, right? It's every single event that I've gone to right now, and Brian would attest to this, is that we're constantly thinking about what is the app for this event,
Right.
and do I have it? Have I downloaded it? What's the agenda? And we're kind of scratching your heads all the time, like what's important for me to focus in on, and that's something that could pop up, as people are engaging with
Right.
it. It could just be like thumbs up to know what are the key three things that are happening,
Right.
right?
I, that's all great. I guess what I'm asking is um, whether it's customizable, kind of like, right at the moment. Can you change things right at the moment, or does everything have to basically be pre-programmed?
Yeah. So again, the OMS, it can be more real time,
Uh-huh.
right? But again, that's more partnership related, right? It's not something for example, if we're not partnered with somebody and it's just a single event, but as we work with partners that are giving us hundreds of events, they get to make it more customizable and more real time, versus everything is pre-planned and
Right.
programmed into it when you're just doing a one-off.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
that helps.
Because I'm just sort of, I'm thinking about it beyond the trash piece of it, just from a marketing perspective and an
Mhm.
experience perspective of like, can I in real time drive people to something or a partner that I want to highlight or whatever it may be.
Yes, that's exactly what it's designed for. And that's the OMS, right? You driving in real time based on data that you're seeing,
Right.
right? What is happening at the event? What's the chaos? What's
Right.
actually being thrown out? What people are engaging with? And then you fine tune. So that's the OMS by definition. Yes. Who it's opened up to, it depends.
Yeah. Well, of course. Of course. So I'm also curious, just from your company perspective, are there other kinds of applications and or AI based, technologies that you're working on or thinking about that could help events from a sustainability standpoint?
Mm. I mean, from an events perspective, or just really busy areas, I've seen this at CES quite a bit and Pack Expo that we were just at. There's this technology called MassGen.
Hmm,
I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's essentially a cashierless checkout, AI checkout. So
okay.
just imagine AI or Oscar that's more at the bin, but the same technology where you just show your item or put your item in the area, and it just checks you out, right? And that simple, 3 seconds or 5 seconds of tap 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 scan
Right.
is something that really improves the experience at the conference, is what I've seen. If I see a Mastin system from a couple meters away, I will go towards that rather than like the one that has the scanner or an individual that's there, because it's just a seamless experience to check out and get your items.
Right.
um, and you increase revenue as well because more people are passing through, um, um, as well.
Yeah. So just kind of to wrap up here a little bit, what kinds of comments and what kinds of feedback are you getting from both sort of event planners as well as attendees when have
Mhm.
gone through this experience and used Oscar? You know, are you getting feedback that's helpful in terms of improving the experience? Or are you getting feedback that just says, "Hey, this is great"? What kind of feedback and comments are you getting?
I think we're definitely seeing, like you saw from the data, that people are engaging a lot more than we had thought,
Mhm.
right? And so we're heads down in developing different experiences
Okay.
that makes more sense and helps those events out. And that's what's really driving a lot of the Oscar management system. Is initially we had, let's just say, only that you can push out content. Now
Right.
it's getting more granular to people are asking us more and more that, hey, can I actually look at the data at the same time and then make a decision? All right,
Yeah.
at the same time, could I actually change stage 2 and 3 and 4 as well?
Right.
Can I day part it? Right. So specific parts of the day, different things are being played.
Right.
So a lot of this is from feedback and comments
Right.
from event professionals, being able to change regulations and rules on the fly, right? It's a lot of times you're like, this is what the convention center told me. This is how it should go. You get to the event, you're like, all right, this is not how it's working. And they've got a lot more materials that are showing up. And so being able to change that in real time is critical. Um, so all of that is something that has been evolved and created from feedback and just listening.
Yeah. And what's been your experience working with specific venues or conference centers and or airports or whatever it may be in terms of both their willingness to work with the Oscar system as well as again, providing that kind of feedback that you guys need to make this, something that can really help solve their waste problem.
Again, feedback from if you go to the largest convention center in the US, I believe that's McCormick Place, and they've got Oscars in busy areas across their site. And what we see is there's not a single property that we've ever engaged with, from a public facing entity perspective, that doesn't want Oscars.
Okay.
And they might not have their waste management figured out. And that's the point of this, Paul, that it is the only time where you can put the cart before the horse, is what a lot of people feel, where their waste management system is wrecked, right?
Yeah.
Because the waste hauler is not going to accept your compost or your recyclables, and they've canceled that contract because they've just said you're too bad at sorting, right?
Right.
And that's where the public notion of everybody's like, well, why are you sorting when everything goes in the same bin? Well, there are two pieces together here.
Yeah.
They're rejecting it because, I mean, there's no incentive for them is one another thing, but the contamination is so bad that there is even lesser incentive for them.
Right.
And because they have to sort and they have to invest a lot in this, it's like might as well send to garbage. And then on this side, everybody's like, we can't get people to sort, right? And so in this case, a lot of sites, we look at it as different stages that they're at in the spectrum, and some of them they might not be sending it to the right facilities because they need to prove that they can get people to sort.
Right.
And how do they get that data right away to prove to their hauler that they need that service? Is putting an Oscar in or Oscars in the busy areas and being like, look, after a month of events, I'm getting clean bottles and cans. Now let's start the service, Mr. Hauler, or the micro hauler that can come into the site and pick up and pay them for it.
Right.
Right. So it doesn't have to happen first or second. Like it can happen in parallel, and the Oscar placement can even begin first. Is the point here?
Right. Well, I think that, again, there's a lot of opportunities here, and I applaud you guys taking on this, trying to solve the waste problem, because I think that, between carbon and waste, those are the two big elephants in the room for the event industry in terms of getting to a sustainable state. Um, anything else? Anything else that you want to just kind of throw out to the audience in terms of Oscar or anything else that intuitive AI is doing, and and then kind of wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap, I think we know consumers in general. It's not a partisan issue. Everybody wants to see less waste in general because if we burn it, it is a health issue, right? And everybody is undivided in terms of health being a priority, and water being clean. And so that's something that is being demanded more and more, and events is something, or concerts or wherever people get together is going to generate a lot of waste. And so it is as you're probably seeing, sustainable events is becoming more and more important.
Yeah.
And that's something that's going to be table stakes for everybody to change or be changed is essentially what's happening.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, Hassan, thank you so much. I would really encourage our audience to, look at what intuitive AI is doing, look at the Oscar product. I think it could be a real game changer in terms of improving your waste diversion. So I want to thank you again for taking the time to talk to us about it today. And again, I just want to thank the audience for listening in to Patio Perspectives. We'll be posting this link very soon. And everybody have a great day. So thanks, Hassan. And we will talk to you all later.
Yeah, thanks for having us.